Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another stream by yours truly, Sound Engraver. I just realized I didn't quite prepare. I need to pull up a couple of things, but I will welcome the chat soon. And we're going to be geeking out on Middle Earth tonight. You can see here this beautiful concept art of Luthien Tunuviel, which, of course, my wonderful prof. Oh, yes, his comment went away, unfortunately, but I think I pinned it where he called me his Tunuviel, and he is my Baron. And I think if I remember correctly, Tunuviel is Nightingale. She is a wonderful. Thank you. I sound great. That's wonderful. Maybe I can sound like a nightingale as well, but I'm not going to sing. Let me pull up my YouTube video. Honestly, maybe I should just not have YouTube up. Maybe that would help. Um, yes, thank you, Jaguar. I've actually had 2000 for a while, but thank you for the uh, the congrats. Yeah, it's beautiful. Now there is a signature to this art piece, but it's so small I couldn't make it out. But if you just Google Tunuviel or Luthien Tunuviel, this should pop up, and then you can go to the website. So I added a little bit more contrast to it, but it's gorgeous. I think it's wonderful, and it's a beautiful depiction of Tolkien's world of Middle Earth. And we're going to be talking about the Second Age specifically, but even more specifically today, we are going to be talking about Isildur. And I think the importance of Isildur and also his heroism and his true, that true masculine nobility that at this point, so far, even with Peter Jackson, we haven't seen the true version of Isildur, and I know we will not be seeing the true heroic, noble man that Isildur was, at least in the Second Age during his time on Numenor, the gifted island, gifted by the Valar to the high, not elven race, the high, elevated, really, not in a terrible way or a disparaging way, but that lofty, wonderful, high, majestic race of men of the Second Age, the Numenorians. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome the chat. And then we're just going to be geeking out on a few things. Now, actually, before I welcome the chat, let me go ahead. I meant to actually retrieve a bookmark because we will be talking about Tolkien's character, the way Tolkien described and told us about Isildur, of course, who is the son of Elendil and also the famed ancestor of Aragorn. We'll be talking about him within the context of the story of the Silmarillion, and then I'll be providing some commentary. But then, if we have time, I actually just want to contrast all the awesome things about Isildur to the things that Amazon is choosing to do for Isildur with the Rings of Power, because he is whoever is depicting Isildur in this show, as we shall say, this TV series, it's just not a good depiction, and it's not the actor's fault. He is directed the way he's directed, so he's probably doing his job just fine as an actor. But he doesn't look the part, and they're not making him look the part. They're not making him look heroic and masculine. And he's supposed to be young, but he's supposed to have a lot of gumption in his time with Numenor, especially with the arrival of Sauron, the Numenorians' biggest, worst influence before the ultimate downfall of Numenor. Now, I will say, if you ever want to learn about Tolkien's Middle Earth, I highly recommend the Silmarillion. And then also the downfall of Numenor is its own separate tale inside the Silmarillion. And depending on your edition of the book, it's about 35 to 40 pages long. It really reads like a biblical account, like an Old Testament account of kings and the fall of kings, the pride and hubris of kings, and their relationships with the elves, the Valar, which were, of course, the servants of the almighty God character of Middle Earth. And then also how they first were very benevolent to the race of men on Middle Earth, They were teachers and all of that. But then toward the kind of the I think it was around the 14th or 15th king. I could be getting this wrong. There was a turning of the tide where they were looking down on the men of Middle Earth, and they had a lot of hubris, had a lot of resentment toward the elves for their immortality, and they also just had a deep prejudice in which they subjugated the race of men on Middle Earth because they thought they were better. So it's a very interesting history, and it's a wonderful cautionary tale of of the pride of men. I think Tolkien it really is synonymous with a biblical account of a wicked king, or what who was a righteous king versus who was a wicked king, and it's glorious, and it's beautiful too. It's wonderfully written. So let me go ahead and welcome the chat, and then I do want to pull up this. I do have it bookmarked, so let me just go ahead and get this bookmarked here. Let me double check if everyone's all here. Yeah, good, awesome, awesome. I almost ended the broadcast instead of the pulling up my window here, or not window for you guys. 1 second. Thank you. Bear with me. I'm glad the audio is fine, and this is a beautiful image of Tunuviel. So we have other bookmarks, and yes, yeah. Oh no, I don't want that. Okay, 1 second. I will welcome the chat first. I think I see Brian Gilmartin, of course, Big Al Presents, and of course my wonderful prof. And I will get to you soon. I really can't multitask when it comes to pulling things up. All right, there we go. I do want to share a short article toward the end of what Rings of Power will do to this great character Isildur. So let's go ahead and welcome the chat, and then I'll talk about my thoughts. So we have my wonderful professor, my handsome Baron, saying, I trust Sound Engraver's Tolkien knowledge hands down over any defender of the Ring of Prime. Nonsense. Yeah, the Ring of Prime. That's what we should call it. Welcome, Dr. Y. You say, how does a single piece of artwork, you're mentioning the artwork that I chose for my thumbnail, how does a single piece of artwork look more awesome than a TV series with a $500 million budget? In fact, actually, I wouldn't even say $500 million. They did, I think, I don't know if they exceeded 1 billion, but it is a $1 billion budget, including the rights to the stories that they are about to tell. So it's even worse than what you say. Yeah, and it looks terrible. Aesthetically, it just looks generic. Visually, it looks very bland. People say, "Oh, the visuals look great." I'm like, actually, no. Compared to all the concept art that's out there, they could have done so much more with the visuals. But we won't get on that. We'll talk about Rings of Power probably toward the end of the stream. All right, welcome, Ace. Yes, hopefully so. And then, of course, Big Al with a quote. There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Yeah, Sean Astin just nailed Samwise Gamgee, and those movies are due for a rewatch for sure sometime this fall. All right. Oh, thank you. Is this new? Because I've had 2,000 now. Yeah, congrats on the 2K subscribers. Sadly, this is another topic that's out of my depth. Still looking forward to tonight's topic. Well, but you are familiar with things like masculine characters and noble men and heroic men and all of that. So it's not going to be completely, even if you're not familiar with the world of Middle Earth. And by the way, I will give a disclaimer a little bit. Any commentary that I have that tonight going forward is actually based a lot on my memory of reading Middle Earth. I was very, very much immersed in Middle Earth about 15 years ago in my early 20s. Now, I am more into science fiction than I am into fantasy, but I really do like Tolkien's high fantasy. And I don't know everything about Middle Earth's lore. I know bits and pieces, but I still have a high respect for Tolkien and his work, and just the beautiful language and world building that he brought for us. When he first started these stories, starting with The Hobbit. So yeah, hopefully you can find. We're going to be talking about just the heroism of Isildur. I mean, now Brian and of course everyone else, if you guys have you guys at least seen the Peter Jackson's films? I'm not going to be really talking about them that much, but if you know those films, you'll know who Isildur is in his relation to Aragorn. You know the ancestry to Aragorn. So that's all very important as well. All right, so we will get back into chat. Oh, actually, I forgot to welcome someone. Marv Alice, welcome. Glad to have you. I think you were the one because you're Jen. I think you're a newcomer because I haven't seen you in the chat except the last time when we were talking about Rings of Power. So I think you were very much into the lore of Tolkien, and I think you had assented to my opinion of I'm not really a fan of the Hobbit films. Um, Maybe the first film is okay. I can barely remember, but yeah, I'm definitely I'm a fan of the book uh, of Bilbo Baggins. All right, so we'll get back into the chat after I just talk a little bit about just my thoughts on Isildur. I even have a very short passage I wanted to read if it comes to it, but so just going into this, talking about who Isildur is as a man and as a hero, I just want to put it up front. I want to put it on the table right now that I do love Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. His film trilogy is timeless. It has aged very well. It is still highly inspiring as a series of films, and it's a wonderful adaptation of Tolkien's stories. Now, there are people who would have complaints, and if I were to have complaints, I would say one thing I wish they didn't do was to change Faramir. Faramir is very different in the book, where he is so aspirational. He really is the Gondorian version of Aragorn in the Aragorn in the book, and he is a holy, devout man who, looks to the West. Looking to the West is figurative. Tolkien was Catholic. Looking to the West was looking to the divine order of things, looking to God or to the servants of God, or to the previous, the saints. Or also just looking as a mortal man, looking to understanding he is mortal, but he has the hope of death as the gift from Iluvatar. Iluvatar did give the promise. I think he gave the promise to men who were to die, and, as opposed to elves who would not die unless in battle. Iluvatar gave the gift of death to men to reunite, I think, with him, with Iluvatar. So there's that promise, and Faramir is that one. He is good from beginning to end. He has no arc. He has nothing to overcome. He is the same man you meet him with Sam and Frodo. He's the same from when you meet them to the wedding coronation, or the coronation, the celebration of welcoming Aragorn as king after the battle of Pelennor Fields, and also after the battle of well, certainly after the War of the Ring. And so Faramir is that holy, good from beginning to end character that I wish could have been depicted in the films. I understand, as far as story, is if he was not in any opposition to Frodo, I can understand as a film, no, you need some opposition to Frodo if it's not going to be Gollum, if it's not going to be Shelob, if it's not going to be being lost, in the wilderness. I get their creative choice for that, but I can understand why people would not have preferred Faramir in the movie as opposed to Faramir in the book. I love Faramir in the book, and I forget the actor's name who I used to know all these actors and actresses, but I forget that actor who played Faramir. But he is very good. He did the role well. He did the conflict between Faramir and Denethor with John Noble. I thought that was I thought that was great. But that would be a soft complaint I would have of Peter Jackson's films. A lot of people complain about the absence of Tom Bombadil, and I personally love that short mini arc with the hobbits and Tom Bombadil and Goldberry. I understand completely why it had to be left out in the films. If Lord of the Rings was, adapted to a TV series, then you would have room for Tom Bombadil and Goldberry and their house, and you would have, the Barrow Downs, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. You'd have room for all of that, not in a film, especially a theatrical cut. You just don't have room for a character like Tom Bombadil. Also, as Peter Jackson once said, you he Tom Bombadil is a very important character in the world of Tolkien and Middle Earth, but he does not further the plot of the ring along in the way of time and a limited duration that you have to convey in a film. So I get that, but that is a complaint. Now, that's not a complaint I have. What if I were to complain, and I want to say it very graciously because I think this I have nothing against the films really. I think it's a wonderful adaptation. If I were to say, like, if Peter Jackson and maybe his wife Fran Walsh were, to talk to me at a dinner table, and they would ask, well, what would you have had changed? What small thing? What would you have us change in the story? I would have said something like a seal door, and it's a very small change, but I think it's a very important one. Um, a seal door in the exposition of Peter Jackson's films, he is courageous to cut the ring off of Sauron's hand, but then upon receiving counsel, or receiving a good just pressure from Elrond to destroy the ring, he has this kind of evil glare, and it's kind of weird looking too. I don't think it works well in the film anyway. When Elrond pushes Isildur to say, "Destroy it," and then, Isildur says, "No," and he has that kind of gleam in his eye, and then he walks away. He's like, "I'm keeping the ring." Well, you know, Isildur we have to establish this. We have to understand this. Isildur was tempted by the ring. The ring he beheld looked fair to him when he was saying, "No, I need to keep this ring as my heirloom." He says in the books, Tolkien in the stories in the Silmarillion says, "No, this ring I will keep for myself as an heirloom of not just my family, but in memory of my father and brother who perished in the war, in the last great war." I think of the second age before it goes into the third age. I really don't know all of the history, what happens, the transition between the second and the third age. But it was the wrong decision. Isildur he made the wrong decision to keep the ring. Elrond and someone else, some other advisor said, "Listen, this is craftsmanship of our enemy. Do away with it, destroy it. This thing needs to be unmade." This was the emblem of Sauron's power. And then Isildur says, "Well, no, in memory, this is a keepsake in memory of my fallen father and brother." And so he keeps it. And he does, he is tempted by the ring, obviously, by its own volition. It was persuading Isildur. The ring was persuading Isildur to keep the ring, to have it not be unmade. And that was the purpose of the ring and the purpose of the spirit of Sauron, before Sauron manifests in his spirit and his armies, from Barad-dûr and the land of Mordor. So yeah, Isildur was tempted by the ring. He was, and the ring betrayed him, and he fell. He placed the ring. He disappeared, and he escaped through swimming along a bank. I think, yeah, I think there was he had an army, a small army of 200 men, and I think they were ambushed. And then he did escape, but then the ring betrayed him, and then he fell to his death, or he was shot by poisoned arrows. And so he had a tragic end, and we know that tragic end. But if you have only seen the films and have not read the Silmarillion, you only know of the tragic end of Isildur, and it's very easy to think, "Oh, well, he was tempted, he turned evil." Isildur, I don't think, ever turned evil. Maybe at the very least, you could accuse him of cowardice at the very end when he ran away from being ambushed. Oh, well, he was outnumbered, so maybe his men I'm not sure exactly the details of this incident, but he was outnumbered, so he did escape by being invisible, of course. So maybe you can accuse him of that being an act of cowardice, but he never turns evil. Now we see what the ring does. He turns Smeagol into Gollum. The ring turns a poor river hobbit to a very detestable, pitiable creature. So we do see that the ring can um, thwart the life and heart and spirit of a soul, of a being. But, even with Boromir, he almost assaulted Frodo, but he came at last to at the very final hour to his senses, and he defended Merry and Pippin, and he defended them to their death. Even though he failed, he wanted to protect them. So, really, Isildur kinda has this, well, he doesn't defend hobbits, obviously, or he doesn't defend, he the ring leaves him, but there's almost this trajectory where it's a very sad tale, what happens to the ring, but like Boromir coming to his senses in his last hour, Isildur, he doesn't come to his senses, but he doesn't also turn completely evil. He doesn't assume the position of the Dark Lord himself. Really, the person about to do that was was Frodo at the very end, even though Frodo is, of course, renowned as the hero among hobbits. Now, going back to Isildur, so we know the tragic end of Isildur, but when reading the Silmarillion, probably for the first time, I remember coming upon a scene in the Akallabeth. I think that's how you pronounce it, the downfall of Numenor. And he actually has an act of heroism. It's really cool. And I remember reading the scene. In fact, I'll probably read it after giving some context. I thought, man, this would have been just a really cool film scene or a TV scene if it's really well done. I am not at all trusting Amazon to do anything good when it comes to Isildur, let alone a pretty much a superhero moment for Isildur. So let me give you some context if you guys are somewhat familiar with Numenor. I don't know all the details, all the king names, and all the years and the dates and all of that, but I'll give you a little bit of context. But I am grabbing a swig of water, so 1 second. So Numenor is a very remarkable place. It's this star-shaped island that was either I think it was lifted up out of the ocean as a gift from the gods or the servants of God, from the Valar, to the men who fought alongside the elves to defeat Morgoth, to defeat his armies, so that the Valar can have their claim on Morgoth and thrust him into the void to be forever, sealed away. And so, as a gift to the men who served alongside the elves to help vanquish Morgoth's armies, they were given this star-shaped island out of the west and out of the ocean, probably the westernmost point of the world that mortals could be. And it's set up in a way that it's supposed to be absolutely remarkable and absolutely, I mean, beyond paradise remarkable. It's kind of like the that the romantic notion of, seaport cities, maybe of the ancient civilizations, but even more fantastical, even more mythical and magical looking. And people from Middle Earth and people from Aman, or not people, but rather the gods from the Valar from Aman, would bear gifts of vegetation, of flowers, that and of trees that would actually just, you know, give perfume to the air, and birds and all these beautiful, wonderful species. It's supposed to be absolutely glorious, an absolutely glorious place for the high race of men. These men, well, actually, first established by Elros, which is Elrond's brother. He's, you know, Elros and Elrond are half elven, and Elros, he chose the fate of men. He chose mortality. Now, he was granted many, many years beyond the average lifespan of the Numenorian, which was also pretty. They lived to be hundreds of years, or at least a handful of hundred, like 200 or 300 years. I'm not quite sure, but Elros, he had he had several hundred years on him, but he did die as a man. Whereas Elrond chose the way of the elves to be immortal, and of course we see him in this in the later of the Second Age, and of course the Third Age with Arwen and all that. But Elros was the first High King of Numenor, and he, you know, it's described, I think, that the men, the kings of men, the Numenorians, the lords of men, had the stature of up to, you know, 7 feet, and that probably included the women as well. And so they were very tall, very probably very much elven-like, without all the elven qualities, and of course without immortality. And they exceeded craftsmanship, wisdom, knowledge, lore, um, everything as far as artistry. They were the best of mariners. They were the best of seafaring, you know, travelers and all that. So you're supposed to really see with Numenor a glorious golden beacon, but of course thousands of square miles. Well, not thousands, but you know, probably good, you know, a few hundred square miles. I don't know the kilometers for Numenor, but again, just going to the point, it's supposed to be absolutely paradise. Like it's supposed to. It's situated in, you know, west. In, you know, further west is where the gods are, and you know, the gods and goddesses of Middle Earth. So it's supposed to have really that divinity, that elven divinity to it, but it's for this higher, more highly esteemed race of men and women. Now, so Numenor was a gift, and for many generations, the first kings, you know, they would take up elven names, and I don't know the names uh, very well. In fact, I don't know any of them. But they were supposed to take up their names were elven, and they loved Iluvatar, so they loved God. They were men. It is analogous to righteous kings, righteous men, righteous princes, noblemen, noblewomen of God. They loved God. They loved the servants of God. They loved the traditions of the elves. They were friends of the elves. These were the first handful of kings, you know, reigning Numenor. But then there was this slight turn of the tide where, or shift, I should say, a slight shift where the kings, while they loved the elves and they respected and admired the Valar, the gods and servants of Iluvatar, while they liked them or revered them, they began to envy them. Simply for the elves, they began to envy the elves for their immortality. It was starting to weigh on them, their finite existence. That oh yes, well we have this glorious life, but our brothers in arms, the elves, they have immortality. I don't think it's fair that we are, you know, we are mortal, that we have a finite duration on this earth. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to throw this in. I think I read it somewhere long time ago, like, you know, 12, 13, 14 years ago, that, you know, it's not really that. I can't remember where I read this in Tolkien's work, but and if you guys know Tolkien, maybe you can throw it in the chat. But the immortality of the elves is actually not something that men ought to be envious of, because if they don't perish in battle, they're gonna perish with the ending of the world. Their fate is sealed with the world because Iluvatar has a second, not a second coming, but he has a there I think it's established where he will have a second reign or rebirth or, recreation. I mean, that makes sense if you're going along the Catholic teachings or the Catholic ideas, that Tolkien would, of course, have. And so, or Christian. When I say Catholic, I mean Catholic and Christian. They're the same. I know that very well. But so anyway, the elves had to wait for the ending of the world. Now, if I don't know about you, now I don't like the idea of death, but I don't think I would like the idea of remaining in the world forever, and especially also seeing the change and slow decay of the world as an elf. That's actually really that's kind of sad when you think about it. Like, your fate is bound to the earth. Whereas men, they have a limited time, and they put forth all their good works and their deeds to a limited time and then pass it on to their generations afterward. And that's I think that's a very healthy outlook on life, to be honest. You have a limited time on earth, and so you want to put forth your best fruits, your best work, your best image, your best conduct of speech and all of that. And so, of course, the men and women of Middle Earth, they had this finite they had this finite lifespan, or they had this limited lifespan, rather. They were finite and they were aware of that, but now the Numenorians, kind of in, I can't remember if it was into the seventh or eighth king, maybe even a little bit earlier, but there was this growing spirit of envy all across the land of Numenor. There this being envious of their immortal brothers and sisters. And so while they were still allies, they didn't they started doing things their own way. And because the elves carried the traditions, the heavenly divine traditions of the Valar, and of course the Valar from Iluvatar, the god character, the god analog of Middle Earth. Well, then the Numenorians thought, okay, we're going to do things our own way. We're going to break away from the traditions of the elves and of the Valar and all of that. And over time, it started corrupting their hearts. And so as the line of kings passed on and on and on, the fear of death, the disdain of the immortal elves grew and grew and grew. And it was at one point where they were once benevolent teachers and instructors of the men of Middle Earth. And then over time, with that spirit of disdain and envy, they actually started um, requiring tribute of the lesser men. I say lesser, not in a disparaging way, but they just didn't have the might and the knowledge and the wisdom and the power of the Numenorians. They were, to the men of Middle Earth, they were like gods of the West. If not the Valar, obviously, but they were so striking in appearance and all of that. And so the Numenorians then, instead of giving instruction and passing on wisdom and passing on lore and passing on craftsmanship to the men of Middle Earth, they decided to require tribute and possibly, I don't think there was any. I really don't know, so you guys can correct me if you know. They might have, yeah, I know they required tribute, but they did see the men of Middle Earth and the people of Middle Earth as, um, pretty much no better than servants. Like, you're not as mighty as we are. So they're, along with envy, of course, that's one of the seven deadly sins. Along with envy came pride and hubris, and the more proudful they became over time, then they really then started breaking away from the traditions of both the elves and of the Valar, and they started doing things their own way. So the kings, long after Elros, the first High King of Numenor, the half elven. Long before that, the kings, or sorry, long after Elros, they started becoming very, not just corrupt and hating death and hating this gift of death, that Iluvatar gave them, to be reunited with God after they died. They started, um, after having this disdain, they started um, using it's I don't know if it's specific. I would have to read the text again, but I got the impression that they started living a life of a gross opulence, and a life of luxury and merriment and doing things that are not wholesome and all of that. But that could just be me just having read the Old Testament and stuff like that. So I could be wrong there, but you can imagine that such a thing would happen if you hated the shortness of your life, that you would then react to like, oh well, I might as well just make merry and do my own thing in very selfish ways because they just did not like that they had to die. So, okay, I'm dying, so I should just, live a life as anything. And by the way, guys, I do promise we will get to Isildur. All of this goes to Isildur. But that is that's what's happened. So the pride of the Numenorians, actually is what caused the downfall. Now, There was there was this, there were 2 distinct groups of Numenor by the time the kings were corrupted. There were the king's men who followed the new traditions of kings, and then there were the elf friends, the faithful, and they are these people, these men and women are described as the faithful. Faithful to Iluvatar, to the Valar, and also faithful to their elven brethren. These men, these Numenorians, loved the traditions of the divine order of things, and loved goodness. They were it's equivalent, it would be analogous to holy men of God or saints of a past time or saints of today. So again, why do I bring that up? Of course, because Tolkien was Catholic, so I have to. Um, so so we've got these 2 groups. We've got these 2 groups, the king's men who followed the kings and their corruption, and then the faithful. And that happened for centuries, and then there were, or at least a handful of years, a handful of generations. Well, generations, they did live long. And it got to the point where the faithful were persecuted by the king's men, and they were actually I think they were removed from the western side of the island. I think they had to be, moved the faithful had to be moved to the eastern side so that the king and his men can keep a watch on them. And so they would, if they would denounce, fealty to the king's men, if the faithful, would denounce, the traditions and denounce loyalty to the king's men, at least the traditions, they were never rebellious. Not I don't think they were rebellious until the very, I don't know. I'd have to look. Um, they wouldn't go against the king, but they were very vigilant, saying no, we still have to follow the traditions of the elves and of the Valar. That's who we are as Numenorians. Well, they were persecuted by the king's men for such beliefs, and that's a really good example of religious persecution. Now, fast forward a little bit, the pride kept going through king after king after king. There was one righteous king sandwiched in between the corrupt kings, and he would make an appeal to the Valar, and I don't think the Valar listened to him. Not against him, I don't think, but because the Numenorians were so corrupt at that point. And then after him, it was wicked king after wicked king, and also I think there were a couple proud queens as well. And fast forward to the last reigning king of Numenor before its downfall, and that is Ar-Pharazôn. And his name is particularly interesting because him and his grandfather and, or, his ancestors, when they became corrupt, they ceased to use the elven name for their kingship, and then they would use I think their own language, but it kind of has this like harshness to it. So Ar-Pharazôn, it almost kind of sounds dwarven. He was the last king before the downfall. And up until this point, the kings thought they were the lords of the West, which is actually a name for Manwë, the greatest servant of Ilúvatar over on the West. And Sauron, in the meantime, had been gathering armies, amassing all these armies, trying to get these territories all across Middle Earth. And he established his infamy, and he established his name as Lord of the Earth, or Lord of Middle Earth, or maybe he did establish his name as Lord of the West. I'm not sure, but a title that was a direct um, slap in the face against the Númenóreans. And so the Númenóreans actually met Sauron's forces, and Sauron, seeing the might of the Númenóreans, had to retreat. He could not win with he could not win the battle with arms. He had to win with persuasion and manipulation. So he retreats, I think, to his fortress, and the Númenóreans come upon him, and he, by his own volition, he surrenders himself as prisoner, and they take him captive back to Numenor. And from there, he goes from prisoner, because he's a sweet talker. It's actually like Saruman, very much like Saruman of the Astari. He goes from prisoner to number one advisor to King Ar-Pharazôn. And he says, listen, you're at death's door, but I can show you the truth of Melkor, who was Morgoth. If you worship the darkness that has brought forth this earth, and that was right, out of the darkness came the powers that be. Of course, Ilúvatar made a thing out of nothing, as the mythology goes. So Sauron is saying, go to this darkness and you will find Melkor, the giver of all, and he will give you worlds beyond imagination, and he will give you power beyond your wildest dreams. And that ultimately, with the pride and the prejudice against the elves and the Valar, that persuaded King Pharazôn to go to war, to set up an armada and sail west to the Undying Lands that were forbidden to mortals. No mortal, besides I think one or two, had ever set foot on the Undying Lands. Only the Eldar, the elves, and of course the servants of Ilúvatar, the Valar. And so Pharazôn is Ar-Pharazôn is convinced that he is king, he is Lord of the West, and he will, because he has served this power, this darkness that would bring forth the gifts. He says, well, I can vanquish the Valar. I can claim the Undying Lands as my own, because I am worthy. Now, all throughout Sauron's stay in Numenor, the king's men and Sauron himself, especially with his influence, had greatly persecuted the faithful. Now, of the faithful, this is where we get to Isildur. Yeah, it's minute 43. Well, we're finally getting to Isildur, but this is why he's so important. Up until this point, with Sauron's influence over the king's men, there was great persecution where actually they would Sauron was, well, actually, I got to backtrack, because I think I need to say this in the right order. So the faithful were persecuted. Now, of the faithful was a man by the name of Amandil, which his name is lover of Aman, or lover of the West, or lover of the Undying Lands. Effectively, his name means lover of God, or lover of good. And so Amandil, of course, if you don't know him, he is the father of Elendil the Tall, who is the father of Isildur. And so Isildur comes from a line, a generation, comes from two generations of devotion to the god analog, the devotion to the divine, the devotion to the elves. The devotion to the allegiance of the good elves. So Isildur, having been brought up in a just and righteous way by Elendil, and even more than that, Amandil, lover of the West, he has this duty. He has this duty built in him by his father and by his grandfather to stay faithful, to stay undoggedly faithful to what is good in Middle Earth and stay faithful to the West. The West being the analog of the divine. And so Amandil, seeing that the King Ar-Pharazôn has corrupted pretty much, and Sauron really has influenced pretty much the hearts of every Numenorian who's not faithful to the elves and of the West, they're seeing that they will be either prisoners, slaves, killed, persecuted, whatever the case is. So Amandil makes the decision to set sail to the West, and he goes. He sneaks, to not be seen. He actually sails. I think he sails southeast, and then I think southeast, yeah, north, and then way over west. So his journey is long, and he goes to the Undying Lands to petition and plead mercy, absolute mercy, um, for uh, for the people who have remained faithful, the Numenorians who had remained faithful. Now, and it's not it's there's nothing said of him after that. So maybe he well, I don't want to jump the gun. I got to get back to Isildur, but just knowing that Isildur comes from two godly men, a godly father and a godly grandfather. And so before Amandil goes, however, Sauron is persuading the king to cut down that last symbol, that last emblem of alliance and reverence to the Valar and to the elves, and that is cut down the white tree, Nimloth the Fair. And Nimloth the Fair is it came from a scion, an offshoot from a well, actually, I think it's like the second or third generation of one of the trees planted in the Undying Lands, the Isles of the Undying Lands. I think Celeborn is the tree's name, shining silver. Now, Celeborn is a tree. It's also Galadriel's husband, but there's also a tree called Celeborn. Celeborn is actually the scion, the last remain. I'm sorry, first surviving seed of Telperion, which was the Valar's or the trees, the one of the two trees of Valinor, the silver tree, the male tree that issued moonlight, the light of the moon when the moon the days before there was a moon. And the spouse, I would say spouse, Laurelin is the golden female tree that issues that emits the sun or the light that was far more radiant than the sun before the sun was even created by the Valar. And so these two trees were the trees that gave off the light of the world. Morgoth and the first Dark Lord and Ungoliant, the first great she spider, well, she sucked the light, all the light of these two trees. So they actually were no more after that. However, there were seeds issued from Telperion that came out of the west, and then there were little saplings that came from Celeborn and were born to Numenor as Nimloth, the one sapling or fruit. It was either a fruit or a sapling from Celeborn, and that was established in Numenor as Nimloth, the white tree. So it wasn't a silver tree; it was a white tree, and was the first white tree. Gondor uh, in the time of Aragorn, I think is the fourth white tree. Before Aragorn becomes king, there was the third white tree. Oh no, I spilled water all over my keyboard. um, but I'm okay. I'm good. So the white tree is the symbol. It's the emblematic symbol of alliance and devotion of the faithful men and women, revering the servants of Iluvatar, revering the Valar, and loving the elves. You know, the faithful were also called elf friends. In fact, actually, Elendil, Isildur's father, was also named as the elf friend. I think that's actually what his name even means, translated. I think by Quenya or something like that. And so Sauron, tells King Ar-Pharazôn, saying, "You need to cut this tree down. This is the this is the action that will show forth your might and show forth your, um, uh, you know, strength. That I am not afraid of the Valar, and all of that." Except he says it in a much better way. Now, our Pharazôn doesn't want to cut down the tree, not because he loves the gods, but he fears them. Because even he, in all his corruption in his old age, even he says, no, that would be an omen. If I cut down the tree, that would be, he felt like even he in his own corruption knew that that was a premonition of some kind. Like, I don't want to rattle my saber here when it comes to the lords of the West. Sauron pushes him, but to no avail. Now, rumor of this gets all the way to the east of Numenor to Amandil and to Elendil. And Amandil is cut to the heart when he learns of Sauron wanting to uproot the white tree, and just with all the persecution going on. And so that's where he says, okay guys, this is it. This is going to be the end of our home as we know it. I need to appeal to the Valar, so I'm sailing west. Now, again, before he does that, now finally, minute 52, we're getting into Isildur. Now, Isildur, he doesn't say a word. He hears of this, of his grandfather. He doesn't say a word, and he goes all superhero as far as Numenorian is concerned. He goes to the king's courts, and he specifically, in disguise, goes to the courtyard where Nimloth is withering because it's about to be winter, and of course, winter is the compare it's this symbol of death or being late in life, and so he's in disguise, and under Sauron's orders, it's guarded day and night. It's guarded 24/7. And he goes and he sees the tree, and he takes fruit of the tree and tries, and he goes to escape with this fruit of Nimloth the Fair, the white tree. Now he's accosted, or not accosted, but he has to fight his way out. He has to fight his way out, and he receives mortal wounds in this excursion, in the scrap. But he escapes. He manages to fight off all these people and escapes. And actually, since we're on the scene, I'll go ahead and read the passage. It's only in about a paragraph or so, but it's better if you hear the text. So let me grab a swig of water. All right. Okay, so Isildur. Okay, so I'll go back to Amandil first hearing Sauron's plans. But when Amandil heard rumor of the evil purpose of Sauron, he was grieved to the heart, knowing that in the end Sauron would surely have his will. Then he spoke to Elendil and the sons of Elendil, recalling the tale of the trees of Valinor. And Isildur said no word, but went out by night and did a deed for which he was renowned afterwards. For he passed alone in disguise to Armanellos, and to the courts of the king, which were now forbidden to the faithful. And he came to the place of the tree, which was forbidden to all by the orders of Sauron, and the tree was watched day and night by the guards and his servants. At the time Nimloth, the tree, was dark and bore no bloom, for it was late in the autumn, and its winter was nigh. And Isildur passed through the guards, and took from the tree a fruit that hung upon it, and turned to go. But the guard was aroused, and he was assailed, and fought his way out, receiving many wounds, and he escaped. And because he was disguised, it was not discovered who had laid hands on the tree. And I lost my place. There it is. But Isildur came at last, hardly back to Romania, the eastern coast of Numenor, and delivered the fruit to the hands of Amandil, ere his strength failed him. Then the fruit was planted in secret, and it was blessed by Amandil, and a shoot arose from it, and it sprouted in the spring. But when its first leaf opened, then Isildur, who had lain long and come near to death, arose and was troubled no more by his wounds. So think of the passage of time and the context of that. Isildur by himself goes to the Forbidden King's court, gets a fruit of this tree because this tree is so important. He gets a say. He's fighting off like a half a dozen guards, if not more. So very heroic, right? And then he escapes all the way to the East Coast. So you can imagine he's being pursued at some level, completely wounded, right? So maybe there's like this great, horse chase or whatever. And I can imagine a really nice scene for this. And the context that he gives the fruit to his grandfather, and the grandfather blesses it and plants it, and it does not sprout until spring. Isildur does this late in the autumn, so he is bedridden with wounds, and he is at death's door pretty much forever, like for many months. And the seed of that scion, or not the scion, but the fruit that Isildur received or attained, probably its perfume or its scent or just the healing of it heals the man of his wounds. And I think that's a beautiful. When I first read that many years ago, I thought, wow, that's Isildur. That's Aragorn's ancestor. That's where Aragorn gets his heroism. Because if you think about it in terms of lore, if Isildur had not done that, the line of kings would have been broken in the Second Age. Because the tree established by the relationship and alliance of the Valar, and of course of Iluvatar, that's a blessing. The tree is a symbol of prosperity and blessing and fruit of the line of kings of men. If there's no tree, that's effectively sundering that wonderful alliance between men and the Valar, or at least men and the elves. So nothing wholesome. The line of kings would have been broken even in the Second Age. And Isildur prevented that. He prevented that. So with that deed on top of his grandfather bravely sailing to the Undying Lands where he could be killed because it's forbidden to men, only to plead for his people. And then, of course, the valor and the heroism of his father Elendil and his alliance with Gilgalad. Isildur's a really cool guy. He's a really noble, heroic, masculine guy. I mean, I'm almost seeing Green Arrow fighting with these guards and just to get this fruit. And that's actually an act of faith to get the fruit of the tree. The descendant of of Telperion and Celeborn. He said, "No, I need to get this fruit just in case Nimloth perishes. We need the white tree to stand, so the line of kings will stand. The line of the righteous kings will stand." And if he had to steal it, then he's stealing it from a very wicked, myopic, evil being that is named Sauron. um, So it's a very wonderful heroic story. And not only that, even after the downfall of Numenor, Isildur and his brother and his father would still reign as lords of men, always keeping the forces of Sauron at bay, always keeping the wicked races of orcs and men at bay. So he's constantly in the second age of his life, he honors the Valar, honors the lords of the West, honors the kinship and the alliance of men and elves. And he fights for the good. Of course, at the end, he is succumbed to the ring, but he doesn't become evil. He might have become evil if he wasn't shot first by the orcs. So it might have been a blessing. Not a blessing, but he could have had a worse fate if he had held on to the ring longer than he had. But he did not at that point, because of fate, he did not become an evil being. He was still a noble man. And as a young man, he had the gumption to go to the king's court that was forbidden to the faithful and say, lest this tree should fall, we do need to, we do need to, lest, the tree should fall, we do need to, uh, yeah, I had to put someone on timeout. We do need to restore the line of kings. Now, when that happened, when that incident happened, Sauron would say then, hey, oh, actually, I don't even think it needed to be Sauron. I think Pharazôn, the king, I think by his own accord, he said, let's cut down this tree. And I think Nimloth, the branches of Nimloth, I think Nimloth had to, it was the first sacrifice to Melkor. And it was a darkening of this 500-foot tower. It was this kind of blackening dome. It was initially gold, and then it blackened from the soot and from the smoke of the fire, and it reeked. It actually had. I think there was like a region-wide reek of a smell of Nimloth because it was a sacrifice to Melkor. And then after that, I think I could be wrong. I could be mistaken, but I think that was the start of actually sacrificing humans to Melkor. I'm not sure if Nimloth was the first to begin that wicked tradition or ritual, but the Numenorians began to sacrifice the faithful at one point. So very good that you see from Isildur a lineage of good, godly men, at least to his grandfather, if not before. I'm not sure. But I think that is what needs to be said of Isildur. Because yeah, we understand his tragic end. His end is tragic, but it's not going. It's not. We shouldn't just leave it at that. It should be mentioned that he was a hero in his youth, and he was a hero for many long years as a leading lord of men. And there we go. So I'm going to go back to the chat, and then I kind of want to do a comparison of that and the Rings of Power, because the Rings of Power, yeah, the Rings of Power is definitely not going to depict the nobility of Isildur. Thank you. Thank you, my prof. Tolkien was clearly portraying him as heroic and moral. Any attempt to paint his stealing the fruit as otherwise is grasping at straws. I mean, I guess I could extemporize. It's like if you were to steal plans of the Nazi party to vanquish the Nazis, is stealing bad? That's all I'm going to say. But I guess that would be straw manning too, you think? All right, let's get to the chat. Now, so Go Team Ghost Planet says that Rings of Power is trash and will flop. I don't think it will flop. I think it will have some years before it's forgotten. But that's because fans are going to watch it and despise it while watching it, and they should just ignore it. Um, I I really I just hope I just I just want people to not if they don't want it, if they hate what Rings of Power is, then they shouldn't watch it. But because people are going to watch it out of, bad-mouthing it and stuff like that, and despising it while watching it, and just seeing, "Oh, let's take a look at this car accident," that's what's gonna, lengthen the endeavor of Amazon. So if you guys believe that Rings of Power is a deconstruction at best of Tolkien, which I do believe, then of course the best thing to do is ignore it and hope it will be irrelevant. And those who believe it will be good, I can't stop you from watching it. But no, I think fans who are enraged by what Amazon is doing will watch it, and I wish they wouldn't. But c'est la vie. All right. Ace asks, while on topic of Tolkien, I want your input on a short music piece based on an orc chant from the Bakshi film. Wait. Oh, is that Bakshi? Was that the I'll have to check. Was that the original animation? Yeah, sure. I mean, I could give you some input. Is it something that you did? You can email me a link or a WAV file or something like that. If it's yours, or if it's someone else, I could probably give it. Probably not here on the stream, but I could give you quick input. Marvalis, is that how you say it? Yeah, I grew up with Tolkien. Many memories of my grandma reading The Hobbit to me. Not a fan of the Hobbit movies at all. I wish I read The Hobbit as a kid. I didn't read The Hobbit until I was like 21 or something. That would have been awesome to have grown up with. I understand. Brian Gilmartin says, "Oh, I understand that the Hobbit movies were a lot less popular than the trilogy." Yeah, there were a lot of creative choices. I mean, if you think about it, um, I wouldn't mind a second chance at a new Hobbit adaptation. I really do think The Hobbit should be at least one of these 2 things. Um, well, actually, it definitely should be this. I think it should be 1 film. It could be a long film, but I think it should be 1 film. And then I think very good painted animation. Like, you see this concept art of Tinuviel, something really otherworldly with The Hobbit. Um, I just don't like the CGI. I don't like modern day visuals, guys, because it's just looking so generic. Marvala says, "You know what The Hobbit really needed? A half T elf live and a dwarf." Oh yeah, yeah. That will really tie the story together. Yeah, I did find that odd. I found that to be an odd choice. So A says, "I have a copy of the Silmarillion, but have yet to start it. I buy stuff faster than I could read it." Oh, I know some people have that about them. Um, yeah, I mean, you can really start anywhere. I would start with the creation story, obviously. Know who Melkor is and all the gods and goddesses. And then, I mean, I would read the whole thing, really. It really does read like a biblical account. It's not centering on any central figure. It's a tale. It's these passages of, all these different characters, these lords of the elves and the men and the different gods and goddesses, and then ultimately the downfall of Numenor, and then the start of the Third Age. It's really cool. You can't read Silmarillion with the expectation that you're following a central figure. It's just an account of all these figures, just like the Bible is. Brian Gilmartin says, at this point, I don't blame you for not trusting Amazon with Isildur's character, especially of other streaming services. Adaptations are anything to go by. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, even just the marketing is showing us Elrond is crazy effeminate. He's actually assuming he's probably going to be assuming Galadriel's role as a diplomat, as a powerful magic. Now, I want to say magic carefully because magic really is different with Tolkien. I don't want to say it like in a cheap way or in a disparaging way, but Galadriel, she didn't need a sword. She didn't need a sword to fend off foes. It's actually a disservice to Galadriel's character to see this actress, and nothing against the actress of doing this Amazon show. She looks like a delightful person. She has a sweet smile and all that, and she has very nice disposition. But when you see her, trying to like take down a troll or trying to like fight an orc or whatever, it's like the Galadriel in Tolkien's world, like trolls and orcs wouldn't stand a chance with her power. She was that powerful. And so I think they're doing a disservice to both Galadriel and Elrond. Elrond, he the way they're promoting him, he has his hands in his mouth like he's thinking, but it looks like he's sucking on his finger. They're really trying to make him not look intimidating at all. I have no idea if they're trying to make it look like elven armor with him. It looks like cheap rags. Like, I feel like I can find a $30 Halloween costume that looks way better than that. I could be exaggerating, but I'm also saying, Amazon, listen, with your budget, with your money, you could have created something absolutely unparalleled in beauty of today's modern cinema, but you chose to be generic and looking like Game of Thrones and looking like probably Foundation, if but without the sci-fi. No, everything looks generic. Everything looks like it's just come out of a factory. And I'm not even talking about the actual armor and the clothing. I'm talking about the visual effects as well. It looks absolutely cheap. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I think Jacob Watt presents a pretty interesting question. Is immortality a blessing or a curse? Now, when you're talking about that, you're talking about probably the immortality of the elves in that way, because if you have a faith, a religion where you do believe there's an afterlife, and you have faith that you will be a part of that good afterlife, then that immortality forever is fine. Like, so I'm a Christian, and I do have my faith in Christ Jesus. I do believe I am saved, or as my Catholic beau and I say, I'm non-Catholic, but my beau is Catholic. My prof is Catholic. I was saved, I am saved, and I'm being saved. So working out salvation. And that's a whole other debate, probably by Protestants. But I do have full assurance that when I die, I do believe in the afterlife, that is heaven, and uniting with Christ in that, whatever the afterlife looks like there. I say afterlife because people have other religions that have afterlives. So immortality there, it's like, well, yeah, that's fine. That's a blessing. That's not a curse. But with the elves, they're immortal in the physical realm. That might not be something you should envy. And in fact, I think science fiction does explore that a little bit, where it's like, wait, do you want people to be immortal, like with things like um you know population and economies and agricultural crises and stuff like that? Like, no. I mean, there is like a gift in the idea of mortality, where we take our time. What I'm trying to say is, we value our time as invaluable because it is limited. Good night, Ace See you later. I'm not a meat bag. All right. Um, Brian says, it figures that modern culture would neglect the heroism of Isildur in favor of his faults. Oh yeah, we'll get into that actually. So we're coming close to the 90-minute mark. I do want to actually share an article with you, but let's go down the chat just a little bit more. As a Tolkien fan, thoughts on Shadow of Mordor, The Lord of the Rings Online, or Lord of War in North games? I have not done any games, so I can't have an opinion on that. The Shadow of Mordor. Why does that sound familiar? Is that an upcoming book or something? I really, if something stays true to the heart of Tolkien and the spirit of Tolkien, and that yes includes his Catholic expressions and his stories. Sorry. Then I think that would be fine if there is someone that is revering the fictional work. But with Tolkien, it Tolkien is not like Star Wars. The EU is its own special thing with the world of Star Wars, and Lucas allowed it for however he liked it or disliked it. I don't know. Tolkien really just needs to stay one man. Um, Even with family members who love him and want to honor his legacy, I just really feel like the literature should have ended with Christopher Tolkien, with Children of Hurin. And I'm fine with that. Like, it doesn't need to be any more than that. So that would be my first initial thought. I don't know this word. You are just bloviating? I gotta look that up. If you believe this so strongly, then have a discussion. Well, I mean, first of all, this is my channel, and I do have my own opinion of things. But you did use a straw man just now, and I don't respect straw manning. When you say, "Oh well, Isildur stole it," you're actually making him look the bad guy against a very wicked king, and then against an elemental evil that is Sauron. Sauron is not analogous to someone like Satan, but he's a servant of Morgoth, the first enemy. And Isildur trying to preserve the line of good kings of men, and if taking Nimloth. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Okay. Nimloth was struck down. So why don't you say that the king was wrong to strike down Nimloth? Isildur was trying to preserve the life of the tree by taking his sapling. I do not appreciate straw manning, and you are a wonderful teacher. I do appreciate you and your ability to teach, but I do not appreciate straw manning, and we will not have a discussion if that keeps going. Dr. Y says, Lord of the Rings cinema is following the Star Wars trend. The Lord of the Rings original trilogy, good. Hobbit prequels, mediocre. Rings of Power sequels, divisive and bad. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you can make that comparison. Um, I just it's milking the franchises now. It's milking for the money, and then also, of course, for the political messaging. The Rings of Power is not coming from a place of sincerity. If they really, I mean, here's the interesting thing. I don't know if they have the rights to the Silmarillion. I don't think they do. So I would ask then, why are they doing a story on Numenor if they would not have the rights to the Silmarillion? And the next thing is, I guess they're trying to, if they don't have it, maybe they're trying to circumvent the story of Numenor so they don't get legally punished for that. I'm not sure. I don't know the legalities for that, but they're really milking the franchise at this point. I think Lord of the Rings should just be its own. And then honestly, I would love a faithful adaptation of the downfall of Numenor. I think that would be the coolest thing to see. But we're not in those times. we are in modern times that deface the legacy and the people who the people of those legacies. It's defacing and vandalizing Tolkien. And people say, "No, no, they say they're fans. They say they're gonna honor the legacy." That was the language of Kevin Smith with Masters of the Universe Revelation, and he, dare I say, I know it's a crude way of saying it, but I have to, he defecated on He-Man and that franchise. But he said he was a fan, and it was an outright lie, and I do not trust the Amazon as far as I could throw it with the Rings of Power, because I think this will be exactly what it was with Kevin Smith. Exactly what it was. And the thing is, the marketing showing it to us itself, it looks awful. It looks absolutely bad. The aesthetics are not right. They did an Entertainment Weekly that looks like an opening montage sing along of a '70s show. It's like, oh, look at the golden turning of all these characters, and and I have my opinion. That's okay, because my channel is like my living room. I can have my opinion in my living room. So, Go Team Ghost Planet says we don't own the books, but we as fans have them as the films and alternatives, along with the animated Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I mean, the animation was its own thing. And you kind of feel like there was so much potential with those old animated films. You got the otherworldly part of it, right? But yeah, on my video. Really? Oh, I guess I haven't been paying attention. You've seen the Shadow of Mordor game on my video game pile. Well, I'll have to see. With regard to immortality, a ruler that lives forever rules forever, and they won't rule justly either. Craig says, "I'm not saying it was wrong per se, nor am I saying I wouldn't have done it myself." Okay, I'll say that's fair, but stealing has a negative connotation to it. So I mean, I I don't know. I think I think Tolkien would have portrayed that as a heroic feat. Um, but it was also important too. It's like, it's kind of like if we were in a time of our world where such um let's say we had an apocalyptic uh future. I'm not saying we will. Um I don't know. You guys could debate me on that. But let's say there was one bit of information that would help us understand the past knowledge of engineering and innovation, like we would know how to create furnaces for indoor heating and indoor plumbing. But it was just this one little bit of information, but it was kept by a person or organization that was against the bettering of humanity, like that was against humanity. It was like maybe it was a human, it was an organization, alien or human, it doesn't matter. I don't believe in aliens, exist in the real world. But I'm saying, what if there was such an organization that hated humanity, wanted to bring humanity down? And I know I can think of a few examples right now, but I'll keep my mouth shut. Um, and they kept for themselves the one bit of information that could have humanity after an and kind of an apocalyptic turn of events. They had that information that would prevent man from restoring order and good things for the world, like things like electricity and indoor plumbing and stuff like that. You're darn right, if I could, I would steal that information if it saves the lives of other people. Because the thing is, the wicked king's influence, they they were going to kill or at least enslave the faithful and then the other men of Middle Earth. So it's like, stealing's okay in this case. Like lying to an evil person about to kill or torture a friend of yours, unjustly, you can lie to that person. It's okay to lie. You know, it's like, oh, never tell a fib. Well, if it's gonna save a person from certain torturous death, an unjustly torturous death, then I'm gonna lie to that person. It's okay. No, things are not complicated. Things are not complicated. I'm thinking about the dichotom. This dichotomously removes the nuance. No, no, that is post-structuralism. That is postmodernism. That is post-structuralism, and that is not Tolkien. That could be another art form. That could be another art piece. That could be another story. That could be another mythology. That is not Tolkien. Right from wrong, day from night. Well, day and night is not good or bad. Light or dark. Tolkien specifically worked in dichotomies, and it's it can't it cannot be. Like Melkor is elemental evil. Melkor was the analog of Satan, okay? There's no redeeming Satan. There's no redeeming Melkor. He's not a sympathetic villain. You're like, "Oh, he was misunderstood." I mean, his motivations are interesting, why he became evil, but he's evil. Sauron, his second in command, his lieutenant, was also evil. He was different from Melkor. He was different from Morgoth. Melkor, Morgoth, same person. I should use Morgoth when I'm saying the Dark Lord. But Sauron is evil. There's no nuance with Sauron. He went to Numenor as prisoner to manipulate and bring down the highest order of men, and there is no go on it. And I really do like you, Craig. You're my friend, but I gotta be blunt about that. When it comes to Tolkien, now when it comes to like nuances like of things like superheroes, yeah. But oh, and then my prof is defending me too. Yeah, I don't know what bloviate means. Then ask them to borrow their platform to make the views. I mean, I don't think Craig is borrowing my platform, but I will be strict when it comes to that. Um, but don't pile on Craig, guys. He has a different opinion, but differences of opinions are welcome here. But I will say what I have to say. But yeah, nuance is a very precarious thing when talking about Tolkien. Like you can't say, well, let's see. No, I was about to give a bad example. It wouldn't have worked. But anyway, we'll definitely move on. But you know, like I know, I think Craig is interested in seeing Rings of Power because he believes it will be good. You know, a lot of people, myself included in this community, don't believe it will be good. Will be very much a slap in the face of Tolkien for our different reasons, for history, really. But yeah, things like complicated and nuanced. I'm very careful with those terms because I came out of the liberal arts that would call evil good and good evil because it's complicated. And I'm not really reacting to you, Craig. I'm reacting more to the postmodern influences that I've experienced in person as an artist, and then also what we are experiencing in Hollywood. And the thing is, why Tolkien? Why Tolkien? Tolkien was Christian. Like his mythology is Christian. And I know people say, well, there are conservative Christians and there are progressive Christians. And it's like, no, there is a very specific faith to act upon as a Christian. And people are just society is telling us to water everything down. So this is not a direct response to you, Craig. This is a direct response to the use of language. Tolkien of all people would understand the threat of language. Oh, well, that is definitely not me. I don't think that's me. Um, that's I think I've been successful making my point. Now, here's the thing. I did talk very long getting up to the point of Isildur, but I had to talk about Numenor. I had to give the context. Oh, is Go Team going? Bye, Go Team. I'll see you later. Thanks for stopping by. Now, actually, let me go ahead and take just a real quick. I got to get a drink of water real quick. I do want to share with you guys an article. It's a very short article, but yeah, I would say let's go ahead, talks amongst yourselves, and then let me go ahead and grab some more water, and then I will read a short article talking about what the Rings of Power plans, the plans of Rings of Power and Numenor and all of that. So. 1 second. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. All right. Thank you guys for that. Let's go ahead and share this article because it's not going to be a good depiction of the Isildur. We'll see why in just a second. That looks good. You see that a little bit? Good. And by the way, can you hear me okay? I want to be sure this is good. We'll get to the comments soon, but just let's see if you guys can see all that. Yes. Thank you, Al. Hydrate, not bloviate. Is that how you say that word? I've never seen that word, so. All right. All right, so let me go ahead and read this real quick. And guys, still loud and clear. Okay, that's good. Good. Awesome. All right, so this is actually a really short article from what I see, and I think I have to. Do I have to continue? Yeah, I have to continue reading, but I think, yeah, there we go. All right, MSN, the butterfly. All right, so Screen Rant says Rings of Power Star explains how the show sets up the Lord of the Rings Isildur story. So let's go ahead and check that out. By the way, I was right. This picture I had for my thumbnail, that is Isildur. Guys, I thought he was a servant. And look at this ship. Look how awful that ship looks. Like, look at this brown. It looks like cardboard. This is not Numenor. So aesthetics, I give it an F minus. All right. I'm going on sound engraver rant now. Okay. Maxim Baldry, who is set to play Isildur in Amazon's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, opens up about how season 1 sets up his character's tragic destiny. Now, again, that's fine. That's fair. his story is tragic. In 2017, Amazon acquired the television rights to The Lord of the Rings from the Tolkien estate for a record-breaking 250 million. 5 seasons are planned for this epic through Prime Video, and we all know that. Set during the Second Age of Middle-earth, events depicted in The Rings of Power will take place thousands of years before The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit films. Okay, so we all know that. All right, so, okay. Oh, no, this is a different guy. Okay, we'll just give you a premise real quick. Played by Harry Sinclair, in the prologue of Jackson's version of the Fellowship of the Ring, Isildur, son of Elendil, was the king of Arnor and Gondor, and the distant ancestor of Aragorn. Fans of both the books and the films will know that Isildur was the man responsible for cutting the One Ring from Sauron's hand with the shards of his own father's sword. When pressed with the decision to destroy the ring in the fires of Mount Doom, he tragically succumbed to the temptation and decided to keep it as an heirloom instead. And that is right. Good job, MSN. The ring, however, would ultimately betray Isildur, and he was slain by a party of orcs, while the ring itself was lost in the waters of Gladden Fields. Centuries later, the ring would come into the possession of the halfling known as Smeagol, and ultimately lead to his transformation into the creature Gollum, which we all know. All right, this is getting into the meat of it. Screen Rant spoke with Baldry, the actor who's playing in Rings of Power, during San Diego Comic-Con 2022 about his role on the Rings of Power and what Season 1 has in store for this character. Suggesting that, okay, this is important, suggesting that the show's inaugural season will find the future king grieving the loss of his mother. He also says that he is quite, this is in quotes, quite vulnerable, unquote, and that his, quote, relationship to his father is strained, unquote. Check out his full comments below. Yeah, we'll go ahead and read those. Isildur is grieving in Season 1. He's lost his mother. I actually didn't realize that he was quite vulnerable. He's not, Mr. Actor. I think his relationship to his father is strained. It's not in the books, because there's things unsaid between them. Just because there are things unsaid, yeah, you want to talk about nuance, eh? I don't think there's good communication. The comms are down. But there's a deep-rooted okay, actually, let's stop at this point right here. Okay. So, a couple of things right off the bat that is incongruent with the Tolkien text. He's not vulnerable. Why are they making him vulnerable? Now, you could argue, well, maybe Isildur in his youth was really impetuous by going out at night, in disguise without a word to his father or grandfather, and take the fruit of Nimloth. Okay, that could be impetuous. That could be like, okay, that's a little, you got gumption, kid, but maybe not do that alone next time. So maybe it would have been considered brash or not thought through. But he had the strength. He had the strength to get out of that situation, even though he was mortally wounded. You have vitality. You have this masculine vitality to this character with the text given us with the downfall of Numenor in the Silmarillion. And I have a message. Let's see. Gotta double check if my audio is fine. Thank you, my wonderful prof. Okay. So going back to this idea of being vulnerable. He might be impetuous and brash as a youth trying to set things right. But vulnerable, you could tell that this will be a more effeminate take on the character. And that's not the right take to have for an ancestor of Aragorn. And so I would say, well, that's a red flag right there. All right. And then the second thing is an unnecessary one, and that is this supposed strain between him and his father, Elendil. As we see in the text, there is a right order of things. There's a grandfather who teaches the righteous ways to his son, who teaches the righteous ways to his two sons, Isildur being one of them, the oldest. There doesn't need to be a strain between father and son. It's this attack, this modernistic attack on the father figure. So Elendil will have to be a problematic character. He's going to have to be a bad father, or an unkind father, or and maybe an uncaring, careless father. And just a real quick, if you guys can see my hear me okay, I would just love a little bit of a confirmation there. But anyway, I will continue until you guys confirm that you can hear me. But anyway, Elendil is a good, strong leader. He's the king of men in Middle Earth after Numenor. He has good a solid foundation. You know, he has the traditional noble. Thank you, Prof. Speaking of Prof, he has the traditional noble masculine traits that are good. And he doesn't need to be a problem character for Isildur. Now, with the plot, that just doesn't make sense with the plot if you're going to be talking about a story with Numenor, because already the faithful are being persecuted by the king's men. That's already conflict enough. You don't need internal conflict. I don't get this obsession with modern filmmakers and storytellers these days. You know, not you or I, or people who are independent creators. I'm talking about the elitists in Hollywood. They have this real obsession about family drama. Like everything has to be family drama. It's like the drama is in the persecution, the actual religious persecution of the king's men and of Sauron. You don't need another conflict between father and son. Now, you can have moments of tension between father and son, but there shouldn't be an estrangement or a strain when you're talking about two righteous men who want to do the right thing, who want to make things right by their conduct, in the eyes of the Valar. This conflict does not make any sense. All right, now let's go ahead and continue. All right. So the actor continues. He says, but this doesn't make sense, but there's a deep-rooted connection to himself. What does that mean? I think that's the wrong use of the preposition. It could be connection with himself. Like there's a deep connection to himself. What's a deep connection to himself? What's this connection to Isildur? What's he talking about? He says that he knows he wants to find I'll be fair. Let's just read the sentence again. But there's a deep-rooted connection to himself that he knows he wants to find out there. So maybe out there is that there's a connection out there to him. It's just weirdly worded. He doesn't quite know what it is, but he's trying to do the right thing to fulfill his father's dream. He's also understanding that maybe there's something else out there for him. So this is another thing. The second sentence that he uses, he doesn't quite know what it is, but he's trying to do the right thing to fulfill his father's dream. He would only be fulfilling his father's dream because he's aligned with his father's motives and pursuits and conduct and speech and all of that. He's aligned with his father's beliefs, as Elendil is with his father, Amandil. This whole I'm trying to fulfill my father's dreams, this sounds like what Professor Geek would say, a tyrannical father moment. Elendil does not need, if they're going this way with it, Elendil does not need to be a tyrannical father. For goodness sake, he is closest friends with the most noble lord of the elves, Gil-galad. He's a righteous man. He's a holy man. He does not need to be a tyrannical father. So if they're going on that route with Elendil, that's to be expected, because this is a postmodernistic take on Tolkien. And then he goes to say he's also understanding, this is the actor, he's also understanding that maybe there's something else out there for him. It's like, well, there is going to be something out there for him because he he's gonna be one of the High Lords of Middle Earth after the downfall of Numenor. No, what's for him right now is the preservation of the king's line, the line of kings, the good lineage of men. That's it. Welcome. Good to have you, Fourth Age. Awesome to see you. Thank you for joining. I think we're almost about to wrap it up, but yeah, we were talking about Isildur and well, really Numenor, the history of Numenor, and how Rings of Power will really deface the legacy of Tolkien and also Isildur himself. All right, I think we're almost done with this article. All right. The article reads, what makes the upcoming Rings of Power series so fascinating is that the history of the Second Age of Middle-earth was ever only written in the broadest strokes by Tolkien, leaving the show's creative team to piece together parts of Tolkien lore taken from sections of the Silmarillion and the appendices of the Lord of the Rings books. The existing canon leaves plenty of untrodden ground to explore on screen. Yeah, that means, hey guys, let's take the grossest creative liberties with the little that we have. Continuing to, and the article continues, continuing to develop Isildur's character, where fans already know what ultimately lays ahead of him, certainly offers the show's creative team a unique challenge. If anything, this means the Rings of Power iteration of Isildur can become even more tragic as he starts to rise to power. You know, this makes me think that they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. And I would say, then why are you using characters out of the Akalabeth? I think that's what you call the Akalabeth. Let me double check. Yeah, Akalabeth, the downfall of Numenor. If they don't have the rights to that, they should have just done something completely different. Oh well. All right, and one thing that avid Tolkien fans, they had to say avid. One thing that avid Tolkien fans will inevitably be watching for is how closely the show adheres to the source material. I'm not a fan of that term, but that's okay. While the official, by the way, it's just me who's not a fan of that term. I know a lot of people have no problem with that term. So anyway, the article continues. While the official Tolkien canon may only provide the most basic overview of the events of this second age, some fans will certainly be expecting Amazon to treat that material as, I don't know this word actually, sacrosanct, or I don't think I'm even saying that word correctly. Oh well. Fans will not give into the Amazon, and they're looking that Amazon will not give into the temptation to stray too far from what has already been written. How the show depicts Isildur, his father Elendil, will certainly go a long way to showing how seriously the showrunners are taking those massive expectations. Thankfully, fans will not have too much longer to wait to find out. Well, this fan isn't finding out because she's not watching it. When was this article made or written, published? Oh, July 30th. Okay, so let's see. Why was that date important? I'm trying to think why. Oh, I guess. Okay. Yeah, so this is a recent article, so I'll stop sharing, but that is the problematic the problematic depictions uh, uh, of Isildur going forth with Amazon's Rings of Power. Yeah, I just don't think they'll pay any respect or credence to, of course, what we call the source material. Now, again, I've said this a number of times on many of my streams and fixed videos. The showrunners, the writers, they can talk to the high heavens of how much respect and honor they're going to bring to Tolkien's legacy, how much of a fan they are of stories. But again, guys, and Professor Geek, he's the one who lit the first beacon on this. We got to go back to Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith was the one who showed us that he can outright lie to people and the public and say, I'm a fan, I love He-Man, and then be so um so I don't like what's a strong word, like he so out there as far as his n- gross disrespect for He-Man and the character He-Man. It's the same with these showrunners. They can say day and night 24/7 until the premiere, say, guys, we respect the source material, we respect Tolkien. We're going to be very careful with these characters like Isildur and Lendil, because the fans have massive expectations. That is code for, we don't give a what, we don't give a flip. uh, that we don't care. We don't care. We're going to say we care, but we don't care. And the people September 2nd are going to see finally, oh, yeah, they don't care. They did lie to us. They did fabricate all these things, but it's too late because they got the show out. That's all. And actually, I don't know if the fourth age, if RJ's still here, but he was the one that brought to our attention the infiltration of Marvel current comics going into school libraries and places like hospitals, like Ashley Eckstein. She wants her videos going to children's hospitals, and maybe the videos of hers are innocent enough, but the comics, the Marvel comics these days, full of these progressive ideologies, they're not so innocent, and they're coming into these institutions, these public institutions or schools and stuff like that, and government funded and all of that. Well, the same is true for things like this display of Amazon, where it's like, guys, they will say until the premiere of the show that they love Tolkien, and everything coming from that will show that they do not honor Tolkien. Well, it's too late. They got the show out. As long as the show is out, it's kind of like what RJ says with the comics. They don't care about sales. They don't care about the money. As long as it's out there, that's all they care about. That's all Amazon cares about. And I know I came off kind and soft and mild spoken, when I talked about Tolkien and the history of Numenor. But I feel very strongly about Tolkien, the treatment of Tolkien and the misalignment of characters like Isildur. Isildur will not be depicted as he should be, obviously. And so that's how I'll conclude and what I'll conclude. But if I seem a little strong-headed by people who would otherwise disagree with me, just know that we're seeing history repeat itself from the last 10 years, all the way to, the first issuing in of progressive subtext in the 90s and in the 80s and stuff like that. So let me wrap it up with the chat, and then we'll wrap it up for the rest of the night. Yes. Yeah, Fourth Age says drama is all internal for these people. They only know according to what revolves around the self. It is really narcissistic, and it really, this Rings of Power will be an expression not of Tolkien, but of how they see the world, which is not reality, but it's how they see it. Yeah, Gigawatt makes a good point. Amazon is trying to turn it into Game of Thrones with family drama. Yeah, I know. With Elendil and Isildur, there. If anything, there should be this unity, this indelible unity between father and son and grandfather. I mean, can you imagine seeing a wholesome father-son dynamic? You know, like Jonathan Kent and Clark Kent. We're not going to see that with Rings of Power. That is for sure. Oh, that's all right. I'm just happy you stopped by. I hope you are doing well with Thomas Valiant and your upcoming projects. I can't even begin to pronounce this word. I'm going to try. Sacrosanct? Is that how you say it? These words I haven't heard. I guess I learn. Regarded as too important or valuable to be interfered with. Yeah, well, they're certainly not doing that with Tolkien. The media believes that bad publicity is good publicity. Um, yeah, I'm in 100% agree with you there, Dr. Y. People think, okay, I'll be very, very careful with this because it's not applied to everything in the world, but this anti-fragility that we're seeing where these writers and these producers and these people who create these shows and these movies and these comics, they can give you the worst of the worst and they still have succeeded because they've got the relevance. See, I make this comment from time to time with different videos of different channels that their currency now is relevancy. It's not actual currency. It's not actual fiscal. Well, okay, yes, money is important, but it's not as important as relevancy because I don't think longevity is important to them because I think you know what Peter Jackson did with the film trilogy, that has longevity. That's gonna stick with us. I mean, even if there is a reboot of the Lord of the Rings, that's gonna stick with us. I think it was Chris Gore who said something just pretty I found it to be profound. He said, "We don't talk about the Lord of the Rings, the movies." And he said, and I say that as a good thing, meaning we have those, we cherish those, we move on with life, but we can look back to those with pleasure and with admiration. The stuff that's being talked about and perpetuated and propagated that we talk about in our culture, our current culture, we are um it's always on a negative light, in a negative light. It's always painted in a very bad way, um, i.e., rings of power and all of that. So yeah, you're 100% correct, Dr. Y. That's important. All right, a couple more minutes, and then yeah, we'll probably stop right at the two. Man, 2 hours. I meant to make this a short stream. um, uh, Daily reminder: Hollywood hates you unless you agree with them. Well, until you cross the line inadvertently, and then they pile on you. Professor Geek and Sonograver from oh no, we're not going to start a debate. From a religious point of view, these modern creators are like the Gnostics. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were about to talk about something else. These modern creators are like the Gnostics that the early church fought against. The Gnostics claim to follow the source material too. Oh my gosh, I know. That's a good example. You know, I think we'll end it with that. So I do appreciate you guys watching and listening, and I know I didn't talk about Isildur until like minute 45, but I just needed a lot of context, coming up to this character. And again, I just highly recommend reading the Silmarillion, just at least once in your life to understand the beautiful lore, the Christian analog, really, in Tolkien's world, that biblical account of that lore. Um, and Big Al, are you gonna? I cannot pronounce Latin. Oderin dum mentuant. Is that Latin? I don't know. It doesn't look Latin to me, but it probably is. I don't know. You got to tell me what language that is. My vocabulary really is okay, guys. Even though I haven't recognized a couple words, it's okay. Let them hate as long as they fear. Oh, it is Latin. Good. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, Big Al. So, yeah, I think that's everything with me. So, just always as I say, this channel started out as like a music channel with Logic Pro and SuperCollider, and I still will do Logic Pro and SuperCollider, but I really have found the importance, especially with things like Masters of the Universe Revelation with Kevin Smith and now Rings of Power with Tolkien. I really do feel it's important as an artist, as I write science fiction, as I compose electronic music. I really do feel the need to talk about art and the significance of art, and then also the ideologies that really destroy what people have preserved for centuries. And I think it's important to preserve the legacy of Tolkien in its truest form, whatever that, well, not whatever that is. It really is black and white. Tolkien, for as much as his lore, for as expansive as his lore is, for as expansive as his stories go, he really is good versus evil, and that's important. You know, the elemental evil trying to destroy the ultimate divine and the ultimate good. And I do believe that my channel is meant to not be a platform to propagate my own political messaging or whatever, or religious messaging, but just preserving art, preserving good art. And yeah, that's kind of what I want to say. I don't know what I'm gonna give you this week as far as my videos. Um, yeah, we'll end with that. Professor Geek has led you down this path, and that is so true. But until I see you next, keep producing, keep preserving, and keep promoting the good art that you love, and I will catch you later.